I honestly see us needing to basically open up our oil and gas sector more for the next 5 years so that we can progress another 50 years on renewable.
I don't think that is the right product. That's what Harvey, that's what Apera, like what all these Lagora, like that's what all these products are. And so I think for the opportunity set is more than what are the things that enables a lawyer to operate a business that is out of a box. You don't need 50,000 employees in the future to run a company anymore. You actually won't need that. And so, in a way, it actually enables all of us to become that very, very creative founder type.
Hey, Weirdo, welcome back. Today, we're tackling a massive problem that's quietly reshaping our country. People are leaving cities. They're moving to rural areas for affordability and a better quality of life. But when they get there, the social infrastructure is missing. There aren't enough doctors, there aren't enough accountants, and there certainly aren't enough lawyers. Today, my guest is Albert Lin. He's a guy who's been everywhere, man. He's a guy who's been everywhere, man. He started his career researching cancer at the Princess Margaret Hospital, pivoted into private equity, and eventually became a senior vice president of investments at Brookfield Asset Management, where he closed over $30 billion in M&A deals. But he left the world of institutional mega deals to build a regional law firm, Northview Law. Why? Because he realized that the current business model for professional services is broken. It doesn't incentivize young, debt-burdened professionals to move to small towns. Albert is building a scalable platform to fix the supply side problem and bring top-tier talent back to communities that need it most. He's also the lead investor at dCarbonVC, a climate change or a climate tech fund, and he's not afraid to show up to a Bay Street meeting in a trucker's hat. We're going to talk about the rural infrastructure crisis, the brutal truth of private equity, and how AI is actually going to change the business of law, not by replacing the lawyers tomorrow, but rewiring how the admin tasks underneath. Albert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Cody, for having me.
So just before we start out, I ask every single one of my guests the same question. What is a truth in your industry that people do not want to admit?
The truth in our industry that people do not want to admit is that there are tons of changes confronting the reality of what clients need today, and the industry is not moving fast enough to meet those needs. And coming back to sort of what we talked about, one topic is the rural community, the need for social infrastructure. As you really well put, you don't have to go afar to see a bag of oranges cost like nearly $10 or something today. And the cost of living for young entrants to the labor market is quite a challenge. And also, I think there is a change in sort of the need of I don't know what gen we're on, Gen Z, I guess, for a balance between lifestyle and work. And so there are evolving demands that is driving the growth of population in rural areas. Meanwhile, again, you don't have to look that far to see that in rural areas, the way the professional service industries are set up is your single location, sole owner, mom and pop stores. And if you're lucky, maybe there are a couple individuals who club together to have a single location, small local service provider. And that type of business model is not a sustainable business model in the next 10 years in terms of attracting the talent these communities need and deserve.
And just to mention on that, I'm the case study for this because I moved out to the middle of nowhere, literally found out there's nothing. Everybody's still on Facebook and nobody has a website. Nobody's really connecting with anybody outside of their communities. It's really night and day what we see here. And to your point, I moved out here because I wanted space. I wanted something different. I wanted to have a better life that I don't think many cities are getting nowadays. So let's actually get back into your history a little bit. How did you go from being in healthcare to private equity and now law?
I ask myself the same question. And I ask myself, if I were to ask the 20-year-old version of me where I would end up in 20 plus years, there's zero probability that I would have been able to sort of chart my path. I think fundamentally, maybe to my advantage or disadvantage, I am a very, very curious person. And I am driven by learning, and I like to learn new things. And also I don't think I was very self-aware when I was younger as to what I needed in my life to make me sort of feel fulfilled. And so early on in my career, I had this vision of becoming Tony Stark's, and then I'm going to invent a cure for cancer, do something great, and go to Silicon Valley and build up Stark's Industries. And it took a while for me to understand that the journey as a technical founder in biotechnology is a terrible fit for my personality. You do need that sort of that monk like patience, and then have that stomach for naturally the high degree of failure whenever you're embarking on any sorts of research and development type of endeavor. You have to have a very academic type of mindset. And unfortunately, I'm just a little bit too practical for something like that. And so I think somewhere there, happenstance again, I worked for a Chicago family office on the buy side because of my technical skill set. I started getting into diagnostics and then analyzing as a buy side analyst, diagnostics in the medical field. And it's really sort of through that interaction and experience, it helped me understand that fundamentally, I like having a niche skill set. And I like playing that expert and niche expert role. And I saw what a lot of corporate mergers and acquisition lawyers do, as you do when you're on the private equity buy side. And I thought that sort of applying my analytical skill set to and the ability to communicate in simple business terms would be a good fit for that profession. Because most of the time, I think it takes more time to decode what a lawyer is saying than actually just what the answer is. And so that was my experience as a client early on. And long and short of it, I came back to law school at the University of Toronto. And then I went there with a singular goal of becoming the best corporate mergers and acquisition lawyer I can be. And so I started at a seven sister firm, and then I kept my head down and did the typical billing like 2,000, 2,500 hours a year and canceling every social engagement, and then just stopped making them for 3, 4 years. And then somewhere along that journey, I realized that I really actually enjoy sort of being more on the principal side, taking that principal role. Now that I have a good idea of what execution looks like, I want to go back to taking the principal risk and making those principal decisions. And so that's where, again, happenstance, there was an opportunity at Brookfield Infrastructure that is calling. And then so I joined the team, and over my career there, over 8 years, I learned a ton about how to think about businesses, how to think about scaling them, and how to think about resolving invariably problems that comes up day to day. And then it was by this time, I've been on Bay Street for more than a decade. And I got to the point where I wanted to sort of have the next chapter of my life driven by me as the protagonist. And so I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so thereafter, I looked at sort of where my skill sets and my passions are. And so I decided to start my own family office to invest in climate tech, technologies that help us resolve some of the pressing environmental issues that we have because of climate change. And also, when I looked at my skill sets as well, I know how law works. I know how private equity works. So it sort of makes sense. And when you look at sort of the growth of the population in suburban and rural areas, and then the sort of mismatch in supply and demand in professional services.
No, and it's fascinating to always hear the journey. I echo the same sentiment. I started out
And
not
so
really
I know it's a
knowing what I
very
wanted to do, but kind
long-winded
of
way of explaining how
aspects of the
how I
field that I
got here.
liked. Coding was fun for me because to me I was always learning something new every day. It was always a new challenge. And then when I got into the corporate side, it was very much,
Right.
oh, this isn't what I want. This isn't who I want to be. I don't get to make these choices. I just have to implement them. And I think a lot of people in the programming field now are starting to understand that that's not who they were. The programmers who got in to
Right.
build applications to make things better ended up just making things worse. And now they're off going and building their own companies to try and make things better again. Do you see a lot of that coming out in the future? People just leaving big companies because they hate what they built?
Right. I do, and I think there is sort of there's a push and a pull. I do think that it's natural when you are an early career professional. You're focused on job security. You're focusing on learning how to execute. There aren't necessarily other important priorities that are at the front of your mind. As your career evolves, these other priorities start to raise their hands and they're like, hey, what about me? And so I think it's a natural progression for young, early career professionals. And when I say there are also polls, I see that if you look at how sort of our technologies, et cetera, are working today, things are becoming more and more decentralized. And things that the barrier to entry is getting progressively lower and lower and lower. I know that it took Mr. Beast 6 years to dial it in, but Mr. Beast is a media empire. And 20, 30 years ago, the idea that an independent can become a media empire, I don't think there were technologies and sort of the ecosystem is not set up for that. Whereas today, if you look at AI, if you look at all the social media platforms out there, it's very, very decentralized. And there are many platforms where if you have the will, if you have the product market fit, there is tons of ways to approach the market with as an independent. And so I do think that this is a longer term secular trend that you will see that the market wants a
Very fair. And
certain
I like
thing.
that you
And then
added
the
the
more
Mr. Beast thing because that's what
the
I'm trying to do. I'm
larger
trying to build a media
organizations may
empire out of
not
this.
necessarily be
My
able
end
to
goal
move
is to
fast
protect the
than we
creative
believe.
because I'm getting sick and tired of Hollywood dictating the terms of the creator's creation. I talk about Ender's Game all the time because that was a pile of
Mhm.
shit. And if you read the book, that was an amazing book. But I want that kind of
Right.
storytelling to be able to survive
Hmm.
changing opinions, changing minds, that kind of thing, and just protect what the initial creation was. I do want to get into a little bit of your climate tech. When you're talking about investing in climate tech, what type of technologies are you investing in?
Right. I want to frame that by saying that what you know. And I generally am a person who stick with what I know. And then I venture progressively a little bit further and further from what I know. And so what does that mean? Well, I come from an infrastructure investing background. And so we're talking about hard assets. To distinguish this from what you typically see in venture is the your typical VC bros. Or back in the days, it's all about SaaS. It's all about service as a software as a service. Now, AI is going to disrupt all of that. There is a frame of thinking where 10 years from now, maybe softwares won't exist anymore. They will all be replaced by agentic AI and sub agents. And then there will just be rooms of, figuratively speaking, robots talking to other robots. We don't need static codes anymore. And so, to get back to your question, I invest in companies that are looking to solve the climate problem, and then their solution necessarily has steel,
The
has
reason I bring this up
atoms,
is because
has
my
real
problem with
physical
the clean
things
tech and
that
climate change narrative right
necessitate
now is we
like
need to
that solution.
immediately ditch oil to go into these tech pieces. And if you actually look at the tech pieces, they're not there yet. They use oil to be made, they use plastics to be made. They're not environmentally friendly, and we don't have the infrastructure to support them. So this is kind of why I wanted to bring it up is where where are we at in terms of actually implementing these things?
It's quite fascinating. You make a lot of strong points and concerns in the community. There are different sectors that are in different sort of degree of preparedness for mass implementation. So if you take, for instance, and I want to overlay that over geography too. I will take two diametrically opposite ends. Let's say, and I think the carbon capture people are going to hate me for saying this, but I think carbon capture is it's still a bit away. It's going to be a bit of time before you see a carbon capture machine on every single block of your neighborhood. Let's just say that. I think that is a fair statement. In contrast, if you look at the electrification of mobility, we are quite the opposite. It is in the mass implementation stage. Is it a mass market product? It highly depends on where it is. And maybe there is some relation to policy. And so my folks were recently on a pleasure leisure travel in China. And it's been quite a few years since they went back to China. And they were sort of relaying to me secondhand that it's like, holy, I don't know if we can say the word crap. Holy crap. Holy crap. More than half of the cars on the road in China are electric vehicles. And and think about the size of the population that we're talking about in China. And they're, without going too far afield, they have in China, there is a different industrial policy. And there is a commitment to, in some ways, maybe more energy security and energy independence than anything than renewable energy. And they have been at the forefront of manufacturing. It started out in sort of in the renewable sector, in solar, in wind. They make about 90% of the components that go into the solar farms and then the wind farms. And because they are a manufacturing powerhouse, that is something that they know how to do. And you're seeing the same thing in electric vehicles and in the key components, for instance, lithium batteries for electric vehicles. They have a massive industrial complex there for manufacturing electric vehicles. And so I think the debate, and maybe some of the things that you're getting at is then from, let's call it policy perspective, people in the government, or as a consumer, like voting with your dollars, voting with your votes, is the idea that we should focus on things that, can be implemented today, and that is the best use of sort of like our time? Or should we advocate for things that may not be as ready today, but the research and development, we must commit time to the research and development for it to become a real solution? I think the answer is a bit of both, because you're not going to know what you don't know. And if you don't invest in money and capital and political capital into, technologies that has unknown possibilities of changing the world, you're never going to find out. And so I think it's sort of, you need to invest time, capital into implementing solutions that are ready today, but not
Hydrogen.
at the heart of cutting off research and development.
Fun fact to the audience: hydrogen was actually an up-and-coming solution back in the 1970s, if I'm not mistaken, and it was cut off because of oil and gas. And my opinion on the climate change is I understand it's happening. I understand we're not ready infrastructurally. I honestly see us needing to basically open up our oil and gas sector more for the next 5 years so that we can progress another 50 years on renewable. We need the 5 years just to bring in that tech, which will require what current energy mechanisms we have. So that's kind of like where I wanted to kind of bridge the narrative. It's not that I'm disagreeing with either side. I'm just saying that you can't get it
Mm-hmm.
unless you deal with the resources you have first. Like you have to make it come into our markets. You have to make it researched. You have to bring in experts. You have to get all of that ready. But at the same time, you can't just forget about everything we've done up to this point, because that has to transition over there. And I seriously believe that if we went 5 years full barrel into gas and oil to build our green renewable tech, we wouldn't have gas and oil after those 5 years. And on top of that, we'll have 50 to 100 years of clean tech that actually goes and restores our planet, as opposed to what it's doing now is just replacing what we already have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very, very hopeful for the replacing and the rejuvenating of our planet more than just kind of being like, oh, we need to change and taking 50 years
Yeah.
to actually do it. Sometimes you just need to be like, you know what, we need to do the smart decision. We have the data to back it. Let's just go full bore this way and stop playing to the media narratives.
Right.
Let's get back into how AI is replacing lawyers, because I think that's a big topic that people want to get into. What do
Mm-hmm.
you say to the small town
Absolutely.
lawyers that don't even have tech at all? Like they're just trying to get through what they have. How do you bridge the gap to say like this is coming, but not for your job?
I think it's a really, really good question. And then I think we can start with like where you see sort of like that discomfort and that fear that is emanating from. And so if you see um, in the AI submarkets where, they are designing solutions for particular verticals. So in this case, the practice of law, quite often the preponderance of product out there has a singular narrative. We can help you research faster, draft faster, and then we can help lawyers to reduce their billable hours and then be more efficient. And then the logical next sentence is that is unspoken is that we will eventually replace you as lawyers. Um, as an approach, I'm not certain if that is really where the value will immediately come. Is there an end state where that sort of like happens? I don't think so. You will ultimately need some human operators. And, like if you take a look at, and why do I say that? If you look at, like the process of industrialization, it probably used to take 100 people to make a bale of cotton. Now maybe it takes like zero point 0.3 person to mail a bale of cotton because we have machines. We have mechanizations of like production line. But ultimately, we still need some humans in factories, etc., to run the factory. And then if the factory lines are not running well, then something needs to be done to fix them. Um, and so I think there is always sort of like some human components that will be needed. Um, what is interesting to me is that there's not a lot of talk or focus on what I would call the middle office and the back office and the interconnectivity of sort of like how that workflow works. And so my view of like how the industry will change, and you are starting to see it, is that is the core business functions that is outside, the core identity of being a lawyer, that is going to be changed. And so what do I mean by that? Well, if you think about sort of like servicing a client as a workflow, the first thing is you need to engage a client. And so there is a whole lead generation, the sales funnel, the marketing and sales
To anybody who wants to
function.
look, I have a whole
And
series
I
of
can
this
see
stuff
that
right
being
here.
replaced, or highly augmented by AI very quickly. Perfect. And then there is where, when you intake a client, most of the challenge in how we do work, and because you have a data science background, it's when the information comes in, you have the discipline and the methodology to tag the data so that kind of you don't have to transform it, translate it, and then move it from one silo to another silo. There ought to be an architecture where it's a data lake and the information you need does not have to go through any sort of transformation translation. And so there's a data tagging aspect when something comes in. And then you have to evaluate very simply what is the problem, what are the solutions, and generally speaking, to execute the solution, it's like making a car. There's probably 40 subsystems that you need to wire together. And I think it's not so much doing the work necessarily of building the subsystem, but rather is communicating with your capacity where the 40 subsystems that need to be made, that it's dispatched in a way that makes sense. And then someone has to keep track of where are we in terms of delivery of all the different subsystems. Are we on time, on budget? And so there is a whole nother management system for making sure that the delivery is matching with what we internally expect and have guided the client to. And so in some ways, like you can see, I'm paralleling this to sort of like a workflow with a more of an industrial design. And that I think logic dictates. It's
Who
the
currently does that? Is it the lawyer, or is it
non-lawyer
like a
part that
paralegal or an
actually would
assistant
be
that does that?
quicker to be automated rather than the lawyer part.
Context
A
loss.
variety of those people discharge different roles, and therein lies a complexity. And like internally, what we talk about, yeah, there's a lot of going back and forth between different people. And part of the challenge is that when you have smaller law firms that are not really sort of like focused on sort of like workflow and then like process design, um, they don't really have these processes ironed out. And then so I sort of like tell our team is that, well, the first step to making sure that we are competitive as a team is that when we call a play on the field, every person on the team knows exactly what that play means. And it's a challenge for, smaller businesses in the sense that they may not have a formalized way of calling a play. And so, when a play is called, there's multiple players who are out of position. They're not where they're supposed to be. And I do think that with AI and agentic AI, that's the component where I think they would be the most valuable. And then from a change management perspective, it fits sort of like a lawyer driven business well, in the sense that lawyers and doctors, they just want to be lawyers and doctors. They don't want to deal with this quote unquote other stuff. And so I think where the true opportunity set is creating agentic AI that deals with quote unquote the non-lawyer stuff. So that you're functioning as a very, very effective team, kind of like those the Tom Brady, like Tom Brady days of New England Patriots, where everyone just does their job, and then there are set plays of like, if something happens, this is what we do. And it's sort of like I can see that as something that is very broadly marketable, and also from a adoption
I
perspective, I
think you
can see a
speak
product
more
like that
towards a
as being
general
highly
understanding
desirable
of
to
people in their
every lawyer who
professions. Like
just wants
even
to
me,
carry on with the
I just
business
want to
of
do my
practicing.
podcast. I outsource everything to AI now because I'm like, why should I do this work? I just want to talk to you. Everything else I don't have to do. Um, I still have to curate it and be there to like make sure it works, but it's not as much of the heavy.
Right.
I need to do the editing. I need to go out and
Yes.
research through Google for 17 hours to find all of the information. I got my summary of you and all of your information in 5 minutes. And from that, I'm able to have this conversation about your background, those types of things. And those are the processes that we need to
Right.
eliminate in order for like us to just be happy with our work, I think. Um, I have a question. So I built an app that well, I built an app, so it's not like anything like that.
Right.
But I gave
Yeah.
it to my lawyer friend, and it basically just analyzed contracts. So essentially, what I thought it would be was a lawyer could give you this tool for free or anything, and just have you analyze your contacts or contracts individually, just to point out where things might be problematic, and then you can go and say, "Can I talk to the lawyer about these things?" Um, is that kind of what systems you're looking to build out for customer client relations? Or are you
Hmm.
focusing more just on the internal side of things?
Hmm. Yeah, I would say the latter. I think in the first instance, um, and this is where, like, I think I differ with, like, like 99% of the world. I think everyone is looking for a solution to, like, almost like replace or augment lawyer. I don't think
Mm.
that is the right product. That's what Harvey, that's what Apera, like what all these Lagora, like that's what all these products are. And so I think where the opportunity set is more than what are the things that enables a lawyer to operate a business that is out of a box, that they can, just like a content creator could, they no longer need to go to ABC to create a like daytime show, because we have all these tools and products that makes that available. And so I do think that similarly, what you're really looking for is these fundamental products that technology layers that strips away all those non-lawyer tasks. And so I'll give you a little bit of sort of like example. Internally, we're going through a process and we co-name it because of my private equity background. We have a project name for everything. So Project Argo. Argo deals with understanding how does a client through telephones reach out to us. Vast majority of people still use telephones, believe it or not, Gen Z. Um, so we need to figure out how do you go from, depending on if you're on a VoIP system or on a,
Mm.
analog system, how does that intake flow into sort of like a work order? And then how does that work order gets dispatched within your regional network? And then how is the work execution being monitored? And how is the work progress being reported back to the client? And then at the end, how are we sanity checking that we have accomplished what the work order is? And so we have something like that in development called Argo. And we also have something else, what I call Wyatt. So my son, he's only 7 years old. My hope is to bring him into the family business. His response has been coyly, I'll think about it so far. And but Wyatt, have you ever as you scale, a lot of small business owners, I think, can resonate with this pain, which is you have so many direct reports that you are chasing every day on where are these things? when are they going to be done, and what is the bottleneck? Why is it not done? And my view is that you don't really need the latest NVIDIA computer chips to do this, and rather you just have to have a system where at the principles level, in my mind, I have a list of direct reports and then the KPIs that I'm tracking in my brain. And I just need to communicate with Wyatt. Wyatt, your job is to herd the cats. What you need to do is to chase this all down and report it in a single page manner that I can understand, the way I like to understand information. And so, in some ways, what Wyatt is intended to do is to strip out the entire middle management in some ways. And it's management. And then we have one last system, what we call Caspian. So Caspian is the start of what I call sort of AI assisted intuition within our organization. So if you look at what a lawyer does, I would say about 95% of our work is in a Microsoft native environment already. It's Outlook, it's Word. Now, data management and accounting tend to be not on those systems. And so what we have to do is to integrate all four systems. So you have your workplace environment, which is Outlook, Word. You have your data management. So we have done that. We have internalized all our data management back onto SharePoint, which, by the way, Word and Outlook is on the same architecture as SharePoint. In fact, it all came from SharePoint. And so lastly, we have to figure out how to integrate this three system, which is now one master system, with another subsystem, which is accounting. And believe it or not, I would say 80 to 95% of small rural and suburban practices, their software, their accounting software,
Mine still has physical files, by the way.
Legacy, not cloud enabled, private servers, which is mind boggling to me. And so, right. So there is a lot to be said about automating. It's sort
Very
of like
fair. I do want to touch in on the point of Wyatt. I actually believe that's an amazing system. It's actually one of the reasons I left the government was because we refused to take in that data to even get the KPIs or the metrics based off of these platforms because the upper management didn't want it. And I'm like, how are we supposed to better ourselves for our citizens if we're not refusing to take in metrics that we need? And to better those services. I appreciate that you're taking the stance of you need those metrics regardless. Because the whole point, I think, to anything is to get better and to be more efficient, which is the opposite of how the government operates. What do you hope for when you go to market with? Like, are you currently at market with this?
We're internally testing and redeveloping the system. And I think we are agnostic as to what we do with the product. I think we have a very entrepreneur type of mentality where we see the problem and we need to build a solution because the solution does not exist. And then it certainly does not exist in ways that we can understand it. And so, and we see this a lot, like there is this dichotomy of a tech founder driven business versus an operator, entrepreneur developed business. The tech founder sort of driven business is like your stereotypical, really nice, flashy websites. There's a lot of complicated words that says a whole bunch of things. And then the software looks like it has 47 functionalities. And it's so sophisticated. But the reality is when you go into implementation, no one likes it. No one wants to use it because when you look at the product design, not a single one of the product designer has actually ever operated in a business. They are Stanford grads who know computer science and they're good at building programs. Whereas they don't understand that for a guy who is, dispatching trucks and crawling into the crawl spaces of like installing HVAC systems, your computer program is as good as in Chinese to them. And it's not going to work. And so, conversely, when you are an operator developing solutions, you're quite good at detecting what exactly is the problem and what is exactly the solution that you need. However, you don't know how computers work. And so you need to partner with the right technology partner to build a solution for you. And so that's where we are in our journey. And ultimately, I think of it as that once a solution is built, is there a potential where we externalize, the software or whatever you want to call it, agentic AI, into an external system where it can benefit sort of like other law firms? Yes, of course. I think that would be a logical progression. And ultimately, what would be even better is that if it's a solution that is built for the suburban and regional market, it would make
Very fair.
sense.
And you actually
Then
touched
if
on
it
one of the points
fits
that I
into our
loved in
goal of
programming. It
helping
wasn't
these
that I was just making the system. It was I was
the
understanding
services that they
how
need
they
and that they
were
deserve.
doing their work so that I could better build the system for them. My favorite part was talking to the business side of things, really figuring out how they work so that I could modify anything that they needed
Mhm,
just to flow a little bit better for them.
mhm.
Um, Fun fact, the government only got into UX development and user experience stuff in 2018. So don't expect anything
Yeah.
good coming out in anytime soon. Um, but it gave me insight into many fields, and I could run a lot of the times when I was building an application, I could then do the job of that person that I was building the application for, which gave me a lot more insight. I call myself a polymath just because I like to figure things out regardless. Um, I do want to get a little bit into data management. How are you keeping this protected? Because that is a big problem with law nowadays.
Yeah.
Is well, there's too many. There's way too many for different districts, different places, and then on top of that, data privacy laws. How are you guys working with that?
Well, right. So you are right. There is a lot of concerns with like privacy and then also privilege that is very, very unique to our industry. And so, your off the shelf like ChatGPT, that will not work. It has to be encircled, secured. Um, and my technical phrasing may not be spot on, but the idea is that, of course, the original LLM is trained in some sort of like a public domain, but the the sub LLM that you are sort of like basing it with like new information that has to be in a privately sort of like off interweb type of like secure environment. So in an odd way, it's not necessarily like a private server, but it's kind of like a private server, but just one with a bigger brain than like, static codes. So maybe a different way of thinking about it is that, well, it's not like we don't have computer programs that we use every day that like that is has client information that has in the government like like people's like personal like IPEDA like personal
Um,
information.
so I will just
It's
put this up
having
in here.
layering
I came
in
across a
security
company not too
content
long ago. They actually
on
train
programs
models for
like
you now.
that.
So you can go to this website, you could pick the upper level model and then have it train in whatever way you want it to. I'll make sure to link that here. But this is what I wanted to get into a little bit is people I really want to define the difference between the LLMs that the companies
Yeah.
use and the actual models that are getting built into these systems. One of the biggest narratives that I'm seeing today is everybody's just using ChatGPT. First off, only 3% of the people on the planet are actively using an LLM. And out of that 3%, there is less than 0.1% who's using it effectively and building things with it. So we're not even at the level of people understanding the difference between ChatGPT and whatever you're building. But that is going to become a bigger talk in the future. How are you currently training your models?
Right. We currently train it. It's interesting. Um, Currently, we use and interact with ChatGPT a lot on the non-core legal functions. For instance, we do a lot of that in sort of like our marketing and sales. And we find that, one of the things that I would say legal profession is not really trained for is sort of like making like pitch decks. And whereas like when you look at like ChatGPT and like Nano, like Banana and like all the image creators, it's like it's incredible. And so, like coming from like almost, like a buy side and then investment banking background, being exposed to that, sort of like migrating to the legal world, it's like night and day. And like not having seen like sort of like the decks that I'm accustomed to drives me nuts. And so like we and if you are, and you see this in private equity too, like not just the aesthetics and like the building, but like the data and the linking of like data. But now a lot of junior analysts, their roles are or will transition into sort of like using computer models that's been internally trained to generate the first cut of whatever it is. And then you are auditing like sort of like that first cut. And so I would say for us, we're right now building, retooling our workflow, and then setting the data, the underneath layer data infrastructure. And then so far, our sort of like day-to-day interaction is not in the secure space, but rather outside the secure space to understand and kind of walk through that journey of like figuring out what
Very
is it
fair.
good
And
for.
I
And
just
then so we're in
want to
the
highlight
early
that
experimental
everybody
stage. And
that you're
then I
experimenting
think
right
in
now.
Q2 and Q3, we will
As far
start
as
to
I'm
move
concerned,
into like
everybody should be
implementation.
experimenting. The 3% actually pisses me off so much because this tool is going to be everywhere. Not this tool, but these tools are going to be everywhere. And if people don't start jumping on board and seeing what they can do, they're going to be left behind. Um, do you worry that there's going to be not enough people understanding what's happening?
Yeah, I think there is already that concern. I think it's sort of like, and I'll tell you, sort of like a lot of times I can see, I probably am very high percentile usage person if you sort of break it down. Embarrassingly, I think I chat with ChatGPT probably a couple hours a day. And so, um, you see a lot of content that is like they call it like AI slop, and there is just something about it that you could tell that this is generated by AI. And so to your question, yes, I think I am concerned in the sense that what AI is really good at this stage is getting things like 70% right in an instant, but that 30% like wrong could get you in a lot of trouble, particularly if you're dealing with things where high precision and correctness has whether you are correct or not has high degree of implication. And so I do think that it must be audited absolutely. And like where the misuse comes is that it's not so much that you shouldn't use the tool. It's that we know the tool is imperfect, so it must be audited. And so I think sometimes people just skip that last step, and then
To
just
people who do that,
and then copy
even
and paste it,
I
and they thought
don't
the job is
do
done.
that.
And
Like,
there's
I
a
will
bad
take
way of using it.
my
And so I
sheets or
think the
whatever,
harm is
I will
there,
run it
like,
through
and like the
3
danger
different
is there.
types of LLMs. Then I'll have all of those LLMs verify all of the facts from each other. Like, I don't trust anything, at least in my, when I don't understand the domain fully, will I do that. If you play with it in your own domain, oh boy, can you point out the problems with it. Um, and people just need to understand that you're correct. It's doing 70% of the work, but you still are needed for the other 30%.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you believe people will? My concern is that 30% of
Right.
people, or that 30% is going to be only done by about 1% of us. Do you see any? Yeah, right. That's the problem I see with today's day and age. Nobody goes back and understands. It's
That
like
is
critical
scary.
thinking's gone out the window. Nobody actually is. They're just
Yeah.
trusting it. How do we showcase that trust is proven? Hmm.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I don't know if I have the answer to that question, but I think there are fundamental concerns. So, one of the things that I think about is that as you implement these systems, so let's take the private equity and then the investment world in general. If you have machines that are pretty much doing the first cut and synthesizing and then pulling the information, like the math together to support a business case of whether to purchase a business at a set price or to purchase business at the variable and defined price as being a good decision. And then the human analysts are merely auditing it. Now, let's fast forward 10 years. Now, all that age cohort of the junior analyst, they have never built a single deck from scratch. They have only spent their entire time auditing something. Now, the question is then, is that how humans build expertise? It's difficult because I come from a past generation where I make things from scratch, then I get yelled at, and then I correct my behavior. And then so there is that creation and then being audited by somebody else and then reiteration sort of loop. And that's how I think our generation learned and then how we become experts at something. It's an open question. And I think we may be able to look at like sort of like manufacturing because, like manufacturing's had like automation for a long time. And so I think the question is then, if the entirety of your experience when you entered the workforce for the first 10 years, you have skipped the actual creation step and your job is to audit, would you be able to become sort of senior management? And the distinction in the senior management is that, well, you need labor pool to audit, but at senior management level, you need strategic thinkers who can design new tools, design new processes. So if the entirety of your professional experience has been in auditing these processes, you have never created something, would you be able to compete against someone from a different age cohort that they actually have never, they spend the vast majority of their time creating things from scratch? Would you be
I
able
think I
to be
agree with
as
you on
good,
that,
let's call it,
and
a
it's one of the
programmer
things
of
that people keep on
solutions?
asking
If
me
you
is,
never made a
do I
program,
become a programmer
like
in
I
the age
find
of
it
AI?
hard to
And I'm like,
believe that could
to
be the
me,
case.
I wouldn't have understood programming or how to build an application without all of that knowledge. Like, I did it self-taught when there was no AI to teach me. At the very least, we have the AI to be able to teach you now too. That's the other side of it. There is its ability to teach you how to do these things, which I would have loved as a child. But now as an adult, I'm like, I'm kind of glad I
Right.
went through the work of failing and failing and failing until I figured it out. Um, I sit at the precipice that programming is the basis to understanding the world as a whole. And that's why
Yeah.
I see it still being a prominent field, even just for study. To understand how to build
Mhm.
an application teaches you how your consciousness works, how the human body works. Like, there is so much you learn from coding a system to figure out how it works in real life, or how your brain works, or how anything works in reality. Um, but I worry that we're going to have a lot of people just pressing a button saying, "Do this for me," and build it out. This seems like a good place to just add one final hopeful message. What do you hope
Right.
comes
Yeah.
out of AI
Absolutely.
personally?
I think there is a world where it makes people happier, and it's sort of like this balanced vision that we need to sort of interact with it in a way where it does, quote unquote, the busy work. And what we are ultimately are good at is being creative beings, and then identifying new problems that are worthy of solving, understanding problems in a different way so that it drives a completely different solution. And so I sort of see the world where, you know, ultimately it enables all of us to become the next Steve Jobs. And then you can revolutionize personal computing because you don't need 50,000 employees in the future to run a company anymore. You actually won't need that. And so, in a way, it actually enables all of us to become that very, very creative founder type. And then, setting loose all sorts of people who have unique social, cultural, and like personal experiences to go solve all of the humanity's problems. And then instead of like us being
I like
doers,
that.
we are
I
becoming
also
thinkers,
really
and we are all
hope we
thinkers.
don't get
And
the
then let's
idiocracy.
leave the robots
Um,
to the doing, and then we do the
that's
thinking.
the ongoing narrative, but I don't see it because there are so many problems to solve in this world, and there's so many great people now understanding that they have the agency to do it. My hope out of all of this is just that more people stand up and just fix the things in their lives they want to fix, and that's going to solve everybody's problems across the board. um, we're at time here, so I just want to give you the last minute to plug who you are, where you're at, and anything you want to share for the
Yeah.
audience.
Well, again, thank you so much, Cody, for your time. It's been a pleasure. And then thank you for the audience. And again, my name is Albert Lin. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of Northview Law. We're building a regional law firm to service the underserved communities in rural and suburban areas. We currently have offices in starting from Southwestern Ontario in St. Thomas, Aylmer, Kitchener, Bolton, Aurora, Vaughan, and Toronto. And we're opening our new office in Tilsonburg in May. And what do we do? Well, we help our neighbors, we help people in the community with any sort of legal the needs in relation to, if you own a business, if you're a small business owner, we can help you with any sort of things that you got going on with your company. And then if you're buying and selling a house or development properties, we can help you with your real estate needs. And if you're getting to, the age where you need to get a new will, or every couple of years, you should re-examine how your estate planning is working and does it match sort of what you have in mind. And so those are all the things that we help people with. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And you can email me. I'm at Lin, Lin, at Northview Law.
Perfect. And I'll make sure all of the details are down below for everybody. And to everybody out there, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and everything I'm supposed to tell you.
Reach out,
And I hope you enjoyed
love to
this.
have a chat.
And everybody out there, just stay weird.